Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for your service, Director Pompeo, and we really appreciate having your family here and look forward to you answering our questions. I want to follow up. I've worked with Senator Flake quite a bit on Cuba and follow up on the Cuba issue. Cuba's about to choose its first leader who is not a Castro, yet the U.S. presence in the country has been reduced significantly, and as a result, other countries are filling this vacuum. Will you work to help improve ties with Cuba, a relationship that benefits many states hoping to increase trade with the island? As you know, when I visited with you in my office, I talked about how many governors have gone to Cuba and said, with their agricultural folks, and said, Cuba has 11 million people. We want to sell food products to them, agricultural products to them. So will you work to improve ties with Cuba?
Senator, I recall joking with you about Kansas wheat. The answer to your question is yes. Senator Flake had asked about the ambassador, the diplomatic presence there. I think everyone's aware of some of the concerns, but I assure you, and I'll assure Senator Flake as well, we will, consistent with making sure we can keep these folks safe, we will build out a team there that will deliver American diplomacy to Cuba in a way that represents the finest of America.
Now, as you know, U.S. internet companies, Cuba has very, very little internet capacity, and this is one of the things I think really could open Cuba up to the world. Do you believe the United States companies should lead the effort to help bring the internet to Cuba?
Senator, that question sounds like there may be something buried there that I'm not aware of. So if I might.
Now, come on, Mr. Chairman.
So at the risk of demonstrating ignorance, I'd prefer the chance to talk to my experts at the State Department and work my way through it.
Okay. And there's nothing really tricked there. I mean, I've worked with a number of members of this committee and others outside the committee to try to push the effort to have the internet be a big part of what our first push in Cuba. As you know very well, and we talked about this in my office too, the State Department and Defense Department work hand in glove on these crucial issues, and the job of the State Department is to try to make sure we don't get into unnecessary wars. Your work, I think, is to work hard at diplomacy, search for peace, do what we can, and make sure that we don't get into another war. Are you committed to robust diplomacy, as our ranking member Senator Menendez talked about, and committed to do everything you can to prevent future wars?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. I'm going to follow up also on several members on the Iran deal. Director Pompeo, the Iran deal has effectively cut off all pathways to an Iranian nuclear weapons program. Compliance has been certified repeatedly by the International Atomic Energy Agency and both Israeli and U.S. intelligence agencies, one which you oversee. Yet you have said that, and I quote here, Iran will have the freedom to build an arsenal of nuclear weapons at the end of the commitment, end quote. However, even when the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action sunsets under the current deal, Iran will still remain a signatory of the Non-Proliferation Treaty and a party to the IAEA's additional protocol. IAEA inspectors are not going anywhere, and if they did, the United States and the global community would have ample time to react to any breakout. And in fact, the international community, through the Secretary General, spoke out as to the importance of the JCPOA very recently. In view this position in light of your apparent support for U.S. policy of regime change in Iran, really, the contrast there really upsets me. In 2014, you said you would have preferred military strikes to the JCPOA, and I quote here, this is your quote, "It is under 2,000 sorties to destroy the Iranian nuclear capacity. This is not an insurmountable task for the coalition forces, end quote. Is this your current position, and are you for a first military strike?
I'm not, Senator. I'm absolutely not. I don't think that's what I said that day. I'd have to go back and review. With respect to the quote that you provided, I know a little bit more about what it would take today, but in terms of what I described as the capacity to achieve what I was speaking to that day, I think I'm still pretty close. But there is no doubt that this administration's policy, and my view, is that the solution to preventing Iran from getting a nuclear weapon, to finding ourselves in the same place we are in North Korea, in Iran, is through diplomacy.
Yeah. Do you have any evidence to dispute the IAEA assessment that Iran is in full compliance with the JCPOA?
Senator, with the information that I've been provided, I've seen no evidence that they are not in compliance today. I think your question is, do you have any? The answer is no.
Yeah, and I would just hope, I'm very near to the end of my time here. I would just hope that you understand that the international community and the United States working together is what got us to the point where we are. And so I think it would be very unfortunate if we're the one that pulls back and sets the stage for a very chaotic future. Director Pompeo, this question has been asked by, I think, several members, but I'm going to ask it in just a little bit different way. We are living at kind of an extraordinary time in terms of our Constitution and what's unfolding. My understanding is that Deputy Attorney General Rosenstein has been called over to the White House. As you know, Director Comey was fired by the President. And I understand you have, you went to the best law school in the country. You're a Harvard-trained lawyer, and so I think you really understand the difference between right and wrong here. If we had this circumstance, and I mean, we look very close to it. I don't think I don't think we can dismiss this as a hypothetical. If you either had the firing of the Deputy Attorney General Rosenstein, or you had the firing of the Special Prosecutor Mueller, this would be an unbelievable, extraordinary event in our history. I think it's clear it would be a violation of law, of the statutes allowing this kind of investigation. It would be obstruction of justice. It would violate rule of law as is known in this country and around the world. I think it would put us in a constitutional crisis. And so I'm wondering, as your nominee to be Secretary of State, would you refuse this position if this happened?
Senator, I did answer this question once before. I think
well, I don't think you quite answered it this way.
I think the answer is no. Again, I haven't had a long time to think about it. When domestic turmoil arises, all the more important, I think, to have leaders representing America around the world. I mean, I've seen this. We've all lived this. Right? There was a time when we had a president impeached. Right? We had a United States president impeached. Enormous domestic turmoil. And it's my recollection that most of the cabinet members chose to continue to do their best to defend American democracy and to do their roles around the world. So my thought here as I sit here before you today is that I would continue to endeavor to do that.
Well, I think if you remember, you're speaking of the impeachment of Nixon, many officials that were in the line decided as a moral matter to step aside. They weren't going to have anything to do with it. And then everything happened very quickly after that. But we're in a situation now where I think, this is going to be one of the biggest moral issues of our time. I don't think you know the difference between right and wrong. To just dismiss this and just say, oh, I'm just going to continue to do my job. I mean, as the rest of the government and our Constitution crumbles around us, I mean, would you resign as CIA director if that's the position you're in?
I think that's the same question. I was actually thinking of a more recent impeachment of the president when President Clinton was impeached. That's what I actually had in my head when you asked the question. I think his cabinet members decided that it was incumbent upon them in this time of domestic political turmoil to continue to perform their functions ably on behalf of the United States
Well, I
of
think the
America.
closer parallel is Nixon, but would you take any action if this constitutional crisis that I've described here, would you take any action to do anything about it, to express your opinion in terms of right and wrong?
Senator, we're a long way down into a hypothetical. Right?
It's a hypothetical that may happen in the course of you getting your nomination before the Senate and having debate. I think you should answer the question.
Senator, I'm going to give the same answer I gave previously.
So your answer is you wouldn't do anything.
Senator, I didn't say that.
Well, tell me what you would do.
Senator,
you didn't
again,
tell me what you would do.
Yeah, Senator, I have to tell you, you're down a hypothetical. I've steadfastly, even if it was to advantage not to speculate on hypotheticals today, I'm going to continue to do that.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I would just say I'm very proud of many of the Republicans serving the United States Senate standing up and saying that they think that this would be intolerable and they wouldn't accept it. And I think they're going to step forward. So thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.